Watch your favorite ESPN Syracuse sports talk shows on QSportsTalk.com.
Welcome back to Orange Nation. This is my favorite George Michael song, believe it or not. Number 1 for him in 1988. Monkey. George Michael, our artist of the day.
All right, go ahead.
Celebrating his duet with Aretha Franklin. Going number 1. Are you mad at me today, Steve?
No, I'm not mad at you. Before we get to Mike McAllister, I need to finish this conversation, okay?
Were you doing
J.J.
math?
Starling will turn 20 years old during the season.
A
Benny
sophomore.
Williams will turn 22 during the season.
You're using the two guys
Chris
right there.
Bell will turn 21 during the season.
Okay.
Chance Westry is
Sophomore.
already 20. He will be 21
Sophomore.
before the season starts. I understand what year they are. Okay, I do not look at this as a young team, a team that has, again, they're going to have 100+ starts in their starting
Now
lineup.
I know why you were mad. Jordan's computer was taking so long and sticky because you wanted to try and make an argument that they're not all sophomores.
So two 21-year-olds, a 22-year-old, and JJ turns 20 during the year.
There's a junior and all sophomores.
You just said during the last segment, you said, well, they're all going to be going up against 21-year-olds. They are
I said
21.
24-year-olds.
Okay. That's not what you said.
I
okay.
did. 24.
All right. Let's bring on Mike McAllister.
Do you want a hug? Yeah, I think
No.
you need a hug today.
No, you're like, I'm right.
It's all sophomores and a junior.
I know what year they are in school. It doesn't mean they're young. Not all sophomores are created equally. They've played a lot of basketball.
You could have a high IQ and not be smart.
That's true. Does that apply to you?
No, I was trying to make a burn on you.
All right, let's bring on Mike McAllister, our good friend, publisher of Syracuse on SI, allsyracuse.com. All right, Mike, we disagree on this. Paulie's already saying, young team going in next year. I get that they're sophomores. I think they've got a lot of experience. I guess before we get into Chance Westry, your thoughts. Do you consider this a young team?
Well, I guess the counter to that would be Joe Girard had 100 starts under his belt going into last year himself. Right. So you lost that. So that's a lot of experience that you've lost. So I think that in certain spots, they're more experienced than what they were last year. You mentioned JJ has a full year of starting under his belt, basically. Chris Bell, Benny Williams have a full year of starting and playing significantly under their belt, even though they were both in and out of the lineup a little bit. And then, guys like Malik Brown got experience. Justin Taylor got some experience. So you're not going to have the, eyes wide open, true freshmen all over the place like you did last year. So there's positives to that. But when you look at some of the teams that went to the Final Four and made runs last year that had a bunch of juniors and seniors on it, it's not that either. So it's kind of, to me, in between. There's some older guys there, as you mentioned, Steve, but there's also a bunch of guys that have 20 or less games of starting or playing, even some of those that got experience last year. Chance Westry was just coming in, only played in 11 games last year, didn't start any, only played about 9 minutes a game. So he doesn't have a ton of experience, even though he's a little bit on the older side. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy because you typically don't see guys that are 20 and 21 that are sophomores without tons of playing experience. So I'm kind of towing the line and going in between you guys.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a very diplomatic answer. He's saying that we're both right, so we can move on from this, Paulie. So, Mike, how big is this commitment from Chance Westry?
I think it's really big. It does two things. First, one of the most talked about storylines with Syracuse basketball this offseason has been related to NIL, and it's only, those conversations have only grown louder since Jesse Edwards entered the portal, committed to West Virginia, and made the comments that he did to ESPN. So the fact that within basically a day or two of that going down, you're able to land a very high-profile player out of the transfer portal from an SEC school that was a highly coveted recruit. I think that kind of dispels some of those concerns to some extent and tells you that Syracuse can be heavily involved with high-end talent. And even if, NIL is a factor in some of those decisions, that they can still be very competitive in talent acquisition. And then you look at what he does on the court. He's a fantastic insurance policy if Judah Mintz does not return, because he can slide right into your starting backcourt and play alongside J.J. Starling. But then if Judah does come back, the great thing about his game is he's so versatile, and because he's 6'6" and long, he can play on the wing for you. So you could play Starling, Mintz, and Chance Westry together, you'd have 3 ball handlers, 3-level scorers. Westry is extremely athletic. He has excellent body control, and he's a better ball handler and passer than I think people realize. He really could play the 1 in stretches if you need him to. And, he's probably going to split most of his time between the 2 and the 3, but gives Syracuse, I think, a lot of options in terms of what they can do with the rotation, regardless of whether Judah Mintz comes back or not.
Well, we were discussing this, too. Do you see this as an addition that will lead to a subtraction on the current Syracuse roster? Or do you think this will force anybody out?
I don't think so, just because he can play so many positions that I'm not sure anyone's going to look at him necessarily as a direct threat. The only one that I briefly considered is, if Judah Mintz does come back, does Chris Bell think that perhaps his starting spot is in jeopardy? And he started most of last year at the 3. But even still, I don't think so, because I think Red's going to rotate a lot of guys, and those guys are going to play. So regardless of who ends up starting, if Chris Bell ends up starting and Westry comes off the bench as kind of the primary backup at the 1, the 2, and the 3, assuming Judah Mintz comes back in that scenario, then I still think that Westry is going to play a ton of minutes. And, if Judah Mintz leaves and Westry starts, if Westry starts even with Judah coming back, Chris Bell's still going to play a bunch of minutes. So I think it'll all end up working itself out. And I think, that's part of what Red's message to both the current players and the players they're targeting is that they're going to rotate a lot of guys. A bunch of guys are going to get minutes, and you're going to play based on, how well you perform in practice and how well you perform in the game. So it's really going to be up to you.
I mentioned earlier that John Rothstein from CBS Sports tweeted out that, he spoke with Adrian Autry, and Autry said that he's got 2 plans for roster construction, one that includes Judah, one that doesn't include Judah. What's your gut tell you? And we're not going to know for a while, right? I mean, the combine's mid-May. They've got until the end of May to make a decision about, whether or not they want to come back to school. What does your gut tell you about Judah?
I think it really depends on what he hears when he gets feedback. If he gets feedback that tells him that there's a couple of teams that are basically giving him a wink, wink, nod, nod. We're going to draft you if you're available at our pick in the 2nd round. I'm not sure there's much of a way that he could bump up to the 1st round outside of going to the combine and having just an amazing performance where he shoots lights out and is, just getting by people and crossing over, high-end guards left and right and those types of things. If he has an unbelievable performance at the combine, then I think he could bump up and be early 2nd, potentially late 1st. But without something spectacular, I think if he gets drafted, it's going to be in the 2nd round. And so he's going to need, I think, some sort of guarantee from a team in order to really, I think, consider staying in the draft. If he doesn't get that from anybody and the message he's getting from teams is that he's likely to go undrafted because he needs to work on X, Y, and Z, then I think there's a pretty good chance that he comes back to Syracuse. And even if he does get a 2nd round guarantee, I don't think that means he's definitely gone, but it just gives him a little bit more to think about. So I still think it's up in the air. I still think it's probably about 50-50 at this point. But, we're probably, as you mentioned, not going to know for another month plus because there's still a lot throughout that process that has to occur before he's really going to have all of the information in order to make that decision.
And I think that's one of the reasons why yesterday was so important getting Chance Westry is that you feel like you've got a plan either way now, right? Like if Judah decides to stay, you feel like, okay, you're okay at the guard position. You feel good about that. You feel good about your forwards. The one spot, as of right now, you don't feel great about, of course, is the center position. So, and I saw another one's off the board today. The kid from North Texas is off the board as well, now going to Xavier. But where does that leave the center position right now? Jesse is gone. They're not going to get Hunter Dickinson. The options are limited right now. Who are you kind of looking at as potential options for Syracuse at the 5 spot?
Well, the only name of someone who's currently in the portal that makes sense to me is Musa Sisse from Oklahoma State. He's a former Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, really good shot blocker, not a fantastic offensive player, but also a good rebounder. And I think with, grabbing a guy like Chance Westry and the other players that they have and bringing in Starling, I think they've got a good amount of scoring. So having your big as someone who can rebound and play really good defense and be a rim protector, if you're going to lose a guy like Jesse Edwards, that's not a bad fallback option. So I think he would be a good fit. He's very athletic. He's a former high-level, highly touted recruit. So it would make some sense. I know there was a tweet put out shortly after he entered the portal that Syracuse is one of the schools that reached out, but there hasn't really been much from linking him to Syracuse since that point. So no visit that we're aware of set up or anything like that. But he's really the main name of guys that we've heard Syracuse linked to in the portal. The other thing could be there could be some grad transfers that haven't jumped into the portal yet, but could decide that they want to do so, in the coming weeks, and perhaps Syracuse decides they want to jump on one of those because. The thing about grabbing a grad transfer is he basically not only fills the role that Jesse Edwards was going to have this coming season as far as being your starting center, but he keeps your scholarship distribution right in line with where it was before Edwards left, in that he's only got 1 year left, and then you can use that scholarship for a potential recruit or a transfer in the following off season. So I think that would make some sense, but we're certainly keeping an eye on the portal and any movement that happens. But as of right now, Cisse is really only the guy that we've seen linked to Syracuse or heard linked to Syracuse in any type of really substantial way.
With him as a transfer, though, isn't there a chance that he may not be able to play this coming year because he's already transferred once?
Yeah, I mean, the NCAA's got a lot to figure out from that standpoint, because anyone that has that situation is going to file for a waiver. And we know when the NCAA has to make decisions on who is granted that waiver and who is not, it's oftentimes not done in the most equitable fashion, it would seem, at least from an outside perspective. So we'll see exactly how that goes, but my guess is they're probably going to be more lenient than not in terms of giving transfers even the second time around a year of eligibility, because players and they have agents and lawyers and all of that. They're getting a lot better at how they petition the NCAA and the reasons that they give for transferring. So they're able to find the loopholes in what the bylaws are and get that eligibility right away.
He'll be 21 before the season starts.
That would make the team older. No, he has older. He's a senior,
right? But he's 20 going on 21, like the other guys we mentioned.
We had found a happy middle ground, and you just had to poke the bear.
I did.
I'm the bear poker on this show.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else, Mike, that strikes you about the state of the program right now? I mean, we've heard that Adrian Autry say, I'm not going to be married to the 2-3 zone. They're going to mix up the defenses based on the players that you see coming in, right? Westry and Starling, and given the players who are still in the program, Chris Bells and Benny Williams of the world. Are you starting to think more and more that we're going to see less and less of the zone, and this team's going to get up and down and play some man and maybe press a little bit?
I do, because that's also what he's telling recruits. He's not just telling that to us. Right, he's not just telling that to the media. He's not just telling that to fans. That's what he's telling to recruits. And if you're going to be telling recruits, listen, you can come to Syracuse now because we're not playing exclusively zone anymore. We're going to be playing man, and we're going to be up tempo and all these things. And then you don't do that, you now lose credibility in the recruiting world. And Red has been around the recruiting world for a long time. He's worked in it at an AAU program. So he's very familiar. He's not going to be saying things to recruits to mislead them and then do the opposite once they arrive. That's not who Red is. That's not the way he approaches things. If he's telling recruits, one example I'll give you is Donnie Freeman, a very highly touted 2024 forward who took an official visit recently, has also officially visited Alabama, Texas, and Iowa. He has said that through conversations he's had with Red, it's been brought up multiple times that they're going to be playing primarily man defense, or they're going to be playing a lot of man defense. Still have the ability to switch to zone, but I think man is going to be the base. At least that's what it sounds like. So, yeah, I don't think it's just lip service. I think that's what we'll actually see when next season comes around.
All right, Mike. Great stuff as always. Thanks for coming on. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk again soon.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, Mike McAllister, publisher of Syracuse on SI and allsyracuse.com. And with that, we'll hit another timeout. We're a little bit behind on the clock here.
Syracuse may not lose a game next year because they're playing man, Steve, because I don't know if you've ever taken a phone call. The only reason they lost was because they played zone. So I don't know. There's no excuses for a loss now.
But if they lose, it's because they're a young team. We're back after this.
Wait, what do you think? If they do play man, what do you think the complaint will be? Like if they give up 12 threes in man, what do you think the callers will say? Do we have a guest coming up?
No, we're fine.
I'm just asking a legit question. I'm having fun here. Will it be directed at specific players now? Do you think? Whereas the zone, it was all because just the zone. But now we'll get the calls like that guy can't play defense.
Maybe. They'll find something to complain about.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Call in now, 315-437-7644. What will you blame the defensive problems on next year?
How do you know they're going to have defensive problems? Maybe they're going to be great.
The chat all saying Joe Girard is the problem. That's a legitimate take. I can see that. He's like a residual haunting. If you ever watch those ghosts, whoever plays the two will not be able to guard anybody because Joe stood on that court there. All right, let's take a time out.
All right, back after this on ESPN Radio.